So we told you about the inquest into the Life Esidimeni tragedy that started in the High Court today. Let's bring in the DA's Jack Bloom to give us some insight just into how we ended up here and hopefully what this inquest will be able to achieve for the families of the victims. Mr. Bloom, thank you so much for making time. How important is this inquest in getting to the bottom of the Life Esidimeni tragedy so that there will be some accountability and justice for the families of the victims?
It's a very, very important inquest. The relatives of those who died and those who suffered have waited more than 5 years for this inquest. But it's not going to lead directly to charges. They first have to make a finding that there was causation, that the one thing led to another and was the cause of the deaths. And then hopefully we see a range of charges. I'd like to see the former MEC for Health, Kodani Mshlangu, charged because she initiated the whole thing, as well as senior officials in her department, and also, of course, the people at the NGOs that were so negligent. 144 people died. There are post-mortem reports, which we will obviously hear when the inquest is further along the process. And there were hundreds of people who suffered. They were starved, they were treated badly, and that's why there was an arbitration. That's why there was an arbitration, and Justice Moseneke gave 1.2 million rand in compensation to various people.
Yeah, what are the chances that we'll see senior officials coming to testify? Because what would be the point of this inquest if we're not really going to get to the bottom of the political leaders who took those decisions that led to those mental health patients dying? I see this morning there was the first witness, Cassandra Chambers, who is the operations manager at the South African Anxiety and Depression Group. Are you expecting senior managers to come and testify? And if they don't want to, can they actually be subpoenaed?
Well, look, this is a full inquest. They have the full range of powers to subpoena all those who should be. I did watch the inquest this morning. They've only had one inquest to date. That was from the SA Depression and Anxiety Group. But I hope that we have a full range of witnesses. We've got to get to the bottom of this. And they've got to establish the links between what happened to cause the deaths and who caused it. But as I said, we must look at not just direct responsibility, but also indirect responsibility. And that was the Gauteng Health Department, which embarked on this whole scheme in the first place. I think that there's a range of charges they could consider, and the outcome of this inquest will be to give their findings to the National Prosecuting Authority, and it's up to them to lay the charges. And look, I think all of us want to see guilty people convicted in court. This is only one part of this process, and hopefully it's expedited because it's already taken so long now. We really do hope that this is an open process, there's a fair finding, and that there's an outcome to it after all these years. Justice must be seen to be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 5 years. You can only imagine how those families are doing, knowing that their loved ones died, and still there hasn't been accountability and justice. Speak to me about the arbitration process. You mentioned earlier the process that was chaired by the Deputy Chief Justice, the retired Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke, which led to families being awarded about R1 million in constitutional damages, about 200,000 rand for emotional suffering and funeral costs. My understanding is that there were some families that didn't take part in the hearings, and government was negotiating with them. Has it concluded those negotiations? Have they been paid?
Well, yes. What the arbitration process was directly awarding to those who were part of the process. But I think very sensibly, Justice Moseneke said there's, the patients who survived. They suffered and their relatives suffered. So he made a recommendation that the provincial government would give an award of that amounted to about 1.2 million rand, and several hundred people have approached the Gauteng provincial government. Most of them, I'm pleased to report, have been paid out, but there's still a number who haven't, and I think we need to conclude that process as soon as possible. There's still a dispute about who is going to be overseeing the award of part of that money. Unfortunately, it's the relatives are still in dispute with the Gauteng Premier's office about administering the funds for the benefit of the patients directly concerned. And another recommendation was that there should be a memorial to those who died. Now, originally it was thought that this would be a monument of some kind, but the relatives of those who died have said they want a living monument. They'd actually like to have a special dedicated hospital that can provide good care to mental health patients, which I think is what needs to happen. So, unfortunately, there's many threads that haven't been completed of this terrible tragedy, one of which is that there's still 8 people who still haven't been found. That's the latest figure from the Gauteng Health Department. Can you imagine? They've still got 8 people who are unaccounted for. And I think we need to examine all the evidence and make sure that everyone who is implicated is prosecuted and that there's real justice for everyone in this terrible matter.